A very warm welcome to Dr. Chai and all the audience who are watching the podcast now. And today's topic is food safety technology and its role in the prevention of foodborne diseases. So before we begin, allow me to introduce you to our honorable speaker of the day, Dr. Chai. And Dr. Chai Lay Ching is a microbiologist and lecturer at the University of Malaya. She's the chair of the Young Scientists Network Academy of the Sciences Malaysia that represents the top young researchers in the country who are committed to contribute to the national ecosystem beyond their individual research interests. Part of her role includes engaging young academics in the country to rethink their role in shaping higher education for the future. Dr. Chai's research focuses on infectious microorganisms, microbial risk assessment, and microbiological food safety. So Dr. Chai serves as the Vice Chair of the Technical Working Group of Microbiology under the Food Analysis Committee, JKAM, chaired by the Department of Chemistry Malaysia, and is listed as the Malaysian expert on microbial risk assessment in the Asian Risk Assessor Directory. Also, she leads numerous academia industry projects, such as serving as key opinion leaders of 3M Asia Pacific, food safety research with Kikkoman, Japan, and other local food manufacturers. Her active contribution and involvement in the microbiological safety research has won her the Malaspina International Award by the International Life Science Institute, ILSI, in 2017. And she's currently serving as the scientific advisor of ILSI Southeast Asia region, providing guidance and advice on food safety risk assessment. Dr. Chai is also involved in promoting biosafety and biosecurity in Malaysia. She was selected and provided a fellowship to participate in the United Nations Office for Disarmament Affairs, UNODA, Global South Biosecurity Diplomacy Workshop in Switzerland in 2019. Her research and leadership in promoting research integrity, inclusivity, and excellence has been recognized through multiple awards such as the L'Oreal UNESCO Women in Science Award in 2018, Marie Claire's Amazing Women in Malaysia 2019, Prestige 40 Under 40 Malaysia 2019, and the Asian Women Entrepreneurs Leadership Award 2019. So it is our utmost honor and pleasure to have you with us today, Dr. Chai.
Thank you, Bowen, for such a kind introduction, and thank you for having me here. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. Thank you to Dr. Chai. So now to recite again, our topic of the day is food safety technology and its role in the prevention of foodborne diseases. So before we delve into the more complex questions, let us begin with some questions which are more, which could provide a general knowledge to the audience who are watching. So I'll start off by asking, what defines food safety technology?
Oh, well, before we actually talk about food safety technology or what technology are being used to manage safety in food, we need to first understand what is food safety. So basically when we talk about food safety, so we are talking about how to ensure the food that we eat is actually safe for consumption and it does not cause harm and diseases to the consumer. So what could cause harm? So it could be any physical matter such as nails, glass pieces, wood, and so on and so forth. It could be harmful chemicals and toxins that could cause harm to our health, either immediately or accumulate in our body over a long period of time and cause some of the chronic diseases. And it could be also microbiological hazards that most people would associate food safety with, such as the pathogenic bacteria, viruses, fungi, and parasites. So these hazards could actually enter our food chain at any points along the food production line. So either at the farm level or during the transportation, during our storage, processing in the factory, during packaging. So it could be also during displaying it in the retail market, or also when we are preparing and cooking our food. So when we talk about the food safety technology, so we are generally talking about technology that is used along the farm to fork continuum to prevent contamination. So it means that to prevent microorganisms to get into the food itself, or we use it to reduce, remove, or inactivate hazards. And for microbial hazards, technology are also being used to slow down or suppress microbial growth in foods. So some of the examples of food safety technology are such as ozone water generator that is used in to produce ozone water to clean vegetables, to inactivate microorganisms. The ultra heat treatment, the UHT technology that is used to kill microorganisms that is present in milk. Co-pasteurization, so that is being used to inactivate bacteria on eggs. So co-pasteurization basically is irradiation. Modified atmosphere packaging, the MAP, that is being used to slow down microbial growth and to prolong shelf life of your salad. Smart packaging to indicate spoilage for better monitoring in a lot of food, particularly salads and vegetables. Blockchain technology, which is very, very popular nowadays, to allow for a more efficient traceability, and many, many more technologies. So basically all of this technology, we could classify or categorize them as food safety technology.
I see, Dr. Chai. That was a wonderful explanation from you. And since we're talking about so many food safety technologies being implemented, so in a sense, why is food safety so crucial and important? Or in other words, what are the possible consequences if food safety is compromised?
Yeah, so when we talk about food safety and why is it so important, I think it is very simple. It's just because all of us need to eat to survive. None of us could skip if you want to survive, you need to eat. So although some of you may argue that they live to eat but not eat to live. So no matter you eat to live or eat to live, so food should be something that you eat to bring only health benefits to us, but not diseases. Many has this misperception, or they think that what's so important to study about food safety, there's nothing so serious about it, because it's just about diarrhea. So you just need to squat in toilets for a few days, and after that you just recovered by yourself. Therefore, in Malaysia itself, I think in many countries, not just in Malaysia, a lot of people when they have food poisoning or diarrhea, as long as it is not too serious, they would not go to hospital or they would not seek any medical aid. And yes, if you are lucky, so a lot of time you are lucky, so you just recovered by yourself if your immune system is good, if you are healthy, and if you are strong. But a lot of us do not know that a lot of foodborne illnesses do have long-term effect, or for some unlucky ones, so it may develop into something more serious. For example, listeria. So listeria is a very common foodborne pathogen in ready-to-eat food or in hawker food. So in fact, in our research, we did go around and sample foods from the street, and we did isolate and detect Listeria monocytogenes to be present, pathogenic Listeria monocytogenes to be present in high number in a lot of our street food. So yes, if your immune system is very good, if you are young and healthy, so you either do not get sick, so you get infected, but there'll be probably no disease, no symptoms being shown, or you probably just need to squat in toilet for a few days and you recovered by yourself. But to some people, particularly old people, young kids, or pregnant ladies, particularly to pregnant ladies, Listeria monocytogenes may cause stillbirth in pregnant mother. So these are some of the serious diseases that may cause. So another one, for example, Campylobacter. So Campylobacter is very, very common and prevalent in chicken. A lot of time Campylobacter just cause diarrhea, stomach ache, and probably nausea for 1 to 2 weeks. So you may just need to take leave and stay at home. But there are long-term sequelae or more serious disease associated with Campylobacter, which is the Guillain-Barré syndrome, the GBS. So this Guillain-Barré syndrome will cause paralysis. So paralysis would only happen probably 6 months down after your first infection. So you thought that you have recovered, but actually you are not. So it survived in your body, waiting for the correct timing to attack you. So when it attacks your nervous system, so you become paralyzed. So these are some of the very serious diseases deal with foodborne diseases. Of course, salmonella, something that Malaysians are very, very familiar with. It could cause death. And in fact, a lot of people die because of salmonella. So these are some of the misperception people has with foodborne diseases. They thought that it's just a diarrhea and nothing so serious about it, but you do not know.
Yeah, that's true. I couldn't agree more, Doctor. So just to discuss more regarding the foodborne diseases. So besides the Listeria and Campylobacter that you mentioned, what are some of the other more common foodborne diseases that you have came across in Malaysia in particular that Malaysians should be aware of?
Actually quite a lot, because Malaysia is a tropical country, unlike those temperate country where you have seasons. So you usually see food poisoning cases or foodborne disease cases following a trend, a seasonal trend in which during summer you see the increase in numbers of cases, and after that it goes down during winter time. But in Malaysia, we are a tropical country and it's warm and humid all year round. So basically, for microbiologists, probably this is something very good because you can isolate and you actually could get a lot of microorganisms from the environment, from the seawater, from the river, from the food itself. But of course, to the people, so we need to be very, very more aware of how these microorganisms or pathogens present in our environment and cross-contaminate our food and start growing in the food because of the warm and humid temperature, which is just perfect for microorganisms to grow. So other than salmonella in chicken and ready-to-eat food, which is one of the most common diseases recorded in Malaysia, we do see I think every year, so you do hear of foodborne food poisoning cases from the school that is probably caused by Bacillus cereus in fried rice or nasi lemak. You would hear of cholera cases, which is endemic in Malaysia, typhoid, which is caused by Salmonella typhi and Paratyphi. So all of these are endemic in Malaysia and diseases or cases that has been recorded. But always remember, in Malaysia, whatever we see or we recorded are mainly outbreak cases because of the epidemiology system in Malaysia and how we do our testing and the budget being put in to do routine testing. We are not as mature as the US, that we would be able, or our system is sensitive enough to detect random cases or rare cases that happen in the community. And hence, in our statistic, we do not have statistic number or recorded cases for Listeria, which is most of the time random. We do not have epidemiology data for Campylobacter because the nature of the infection is rather random, rather than outbreak cases. So we miss out a lot of these cases. It doesn't mean that we do not have it in our statistics. It doesn't mean that we do not have the cases. It's just that we fail to detect all of this. The fact of we could detect and isolate from the food in Malaysia. So it just means that we do have all these cases in Malaysia.
Yeah, I see, Doctor. So from the statistics that you and your team have gathered, so what would you say is the prevalence of foodborne diseases in Malaysia?
I think in Malaysia, our most prevalent case would be Salmonella and E. coli, pathogenic E. coli. So particularly Salmonella. If we were to talk about Salmonella, we do have epidemiology of all the outbreaks that is associated with it. So we do have surveillance data that show that Salmonella present in all types of food, not just present but growing in our food. And a lot of these Salmonella, they are pathogenic in nature.
I see, Doctor. Now, since we have talked about a general sense and general knowledge about foodborne diseases, now we'll move on into a more complex and specific questions regarding foodborne technology. So what are the general measures or general protocol taken to ensure that the food safety is has a like certain standard in the restaurant or in Malaysia in general? Yeah.
Yeah, so when we talk about food safety management in Malaysia, Malaysia is actually following a multi-agency system, I would say. So if you were to look at food, from the farm to the fork, to consumers, multiple agencies are actually involved, throughout these systems. So if you are talking about, meat or chicken, so chicken contamination, I think recently we heard of Singapore rejected some of the Salmonella contaminated egg from Malaysia. So these involve veterinary department or the agricultural ministry, because they are the one that in charge of or take care of the safety in the farm itself. However, if this contaminated food has gone into the market, sell in the hypermarket or supermarket and cause diseases, and there are cases people get sick, go into hospital. So then the agency involved is actually Ministry of Health. So under Ministry of Health, one of the most important or the leading agency is actually Food Safety and Quality Department, or we call FSQD. So basically FSQD is placed under Ministry of Health, and it is the agency or the department that is in charge to take care of the food safety issue in the country itself, particularly when it comes to manufacturing, processing, and food that's being displayed in the market itself. And if the food is actually from say aquaculture, fishes, prawns, then again this is the aquaculture industry, and it will be back to the agriculture ministry. So many industry actually many agencies actually come in to play a role over here. When we talk about restaurants, so or stalls or hawkers, so the agency in charge is actually the local authorities. So the local authorities will actually take charge because they are the one that giving license to the restaurant to open and close. And therefore if you go to the restaurant and you see there's a grading, these are grade A restaurants, grade B restaurants, so this is actually issued by the local authorities. But you could see that although there are multiple agencies involved over here, a lot of these agencies, they are working together. So Food Safety Quality Department work quite closely with the local authorities to monitor the hygiene and the food safety issue at the restaurants, hawkers, and also in hypermarkets. In terms of food that is being imported into Malaysia, so all of these food need to follow the standard that has been set, based on international standard and also our Malaysia standard. So for a lot of foodborne pathogens, particularly, we are following a zero risk policy. So zero detection policy means that if we detect one salmonella, we detect salmonella in one batch of the food, so the whole batch will actually be rejected. So at the industry level, so they do practice voluntary standard. For example, hazard HACCP. So HACCP is one of the food quality management system being put in place to better manage and prevent contamination in the end product. So it can be quite complex and complicated, but there's been a lot of measures being put in, like, to ensure that the food that we eat are actually safe.
I see, doctor. That's very clear. That's a very clear explanation. Now, just out of curiosity, I would like to ask, like, if there are foodborne diseases cases happening, who would be the one to like bear the consequences and be responsible? Is it like the agency themselves or the manufacturer?
Yeah, in terms of, like, investigation, the investigation is actually done or lead by by Ministry of Health. So with the help of Food Safety and Quality Department, with the Epidemiology Department, Public Health, and also probably local authorities will be involved if it is a restaurant. If it is, like, say factory, so MITI and all other agency probably may come in play for such a case. So for food that has been detected, like, positive or found guilty, like, or we have evidence to link it, like, this case or this outbreak actually come from food produced by this factory. So the factory will probably be fined, like, if they found guilty, and they need to withdraw, like, the whole batch of food, like, from the market. So penalties may be applied also. So it depends.
I see. All right. So moving on, I know Dr. Chai, you have mentioned kind of briefly going through some basic techniques or technologies used for food safety, but maybe you could dive in a little bit more in detail, like what are the existing technologies that are implemented in Malaysia or other countries that have helped to prevent foodborne diseases?
Yeah, if we were to look into these technologies, so there are a lot of this technology that has already been implemented. So if we were to look into food processing itself, so certainly in the food processing, because we need to produce, like, huge amount of food, and that could actually, like, stand a period of time, like, for a certain period of shelf life before we actually consume it. All of these food need to be produced in such a way, like, that you actually reduce the microbial load or the hazards in the food itself. So all of this technology that is currently in use, like, including, I think heat treatment is one of the most common technology being used, as this is the simplest technology, most efficient technology, as it would be able to kill off, like, most of the foodborne pathogens. However, so this depends on the type of food that we are talking about. So why do we need to have so many different technologies to inactivate pathogens in milk? That's why can't we just cook the milk itself, like, and it is, right? So it's cheap, it's easy to do. Because, like, when we apply high heat to the food, it will change the taste, the aroma, the texture of the food itself. So if you cook your milk before, so then you would know that, like, it will separate your milk, like, into two layers, that you have a curding, like, or probably, like, a layer of proteins, like, being inactivated and removed. So your milk will not taste like fresh milk anymore. So that's why a lot of people love fresh milk rather than UHT milk and so on, because it does change the taste. So the same goes to, like, fruit juices. You can't use high heat, like, or high temperature to process all of this food. So therefore, new technology come in, like, like I mentioned before, cold pasteurization. So technology that do not use heat, the non-thermal technology come in play over here to inactivate microorganisms. But this is actually, like, quite difficult in terms of microorganism, and it incur, like, high technology and higher cost in processing all of this. So some of the higher end technology, like HPP, high pressure processing, so it's using high pressure but low heat in processing all of this food, so that it could inactivate microorganism. So, but whatever technology that we use currently, so it will not inactivate the microorganism 100%. None of the technology could kill microorganism 100%. So there will be a certain efficiency rate, so 99.99% or 99.999%. So it depends on what is the original microbial load present in your raw materials before it go into the processing. So at the end of the processing, there might still be probably 10 bacterial cells survive or 1 bacterial cell survive. So the next question that we look into is how to suppress or to slow down the growth of this microorganism so that we could prolong the shelf life of the food itself. So then what come in play, the technology come in play over here is like, of course, the one that you heard a lot is also playing with the temperature, which is the freezing, refrigerated, so all of these are the common technology being used. But nowadays, so we wanted to be able to distribute food, to broader geographical area without the need to have cold storage. Can we send all of this food to kampong area, poor area, to Africa, who do not have electricity? So we come out with some new technology that could actually reduce or suppress the growth of the microorganism in the food itself. So these depend on packaging. So then you start to see the different type of packaging. So you see Tetra Pak. So these are all different study being put in place to show that this type of packaging would be able to slow down growth. And you have modified atmosphere packaging. So if you go to the market, you see your salad is packed in a gas filled bag. So you wonder, why do you need to fill the bag with gases? So because the gases inside the bag itself consists of probably carbon dioxide or nitrogen. So all of these gases would actually play a role in reducing or suppressing the growth of microorganisms in your vegetable itself, and also to reduce oxidation of your vegetable particularly. So it will look fresh and it will taste good for a longer period of time. So other than that, we are not satisfied with just active packaging. Active packaging is a packaging that actively reducing growth of or stop your bacteria from growing in your food itself. We want more. So we want smart packaging. So what is smart packaging? So if you go to the market, probably in Malaysia is less, but if you go overseas, so you start to see packaging with an indicator. So if this indicator change to red color or orange color, it means that the food inside this package is no longer fresh or safe for consumption. So this is smart packaging. So we are also because right now we are in IR 4.0, so revolution 4.0. So we are talking about smart processing, smart manufacturing, smart packaging, so interconnectivity between or among machines, so that humans do not need to go in there and to do the checking, but rather just sit in front of the computer, or even AI would actually take over and make a decision. This is no longer fresh, and so on and so forth. So the smart packaging may even come with a sensor that is connected to a computer. So another end of it, and if spoilage happen or food gets spoiled, so it will be detected, and straight away this food or this bag could be removed from the displaying shelf immediately. So these are all the different smart packaging that we are talking about. So other than manufacturing, displaying, packaging, and so on and so forth, so we are also looking into testing. So we talk about monitoring, right? So agency need to come in place, Ministry of Health will go around, pick up food, and then go back to the lab for validation testing to make sure that they are actually safe for consumption. Industry also do the same. So they do the testing to make sure that their food are actually safe. But when come to food safety testing, so we are currently still get stuck at the bottleneck. So when I talk about microorganism, to detect salmonella, to detect E. coli in food itself, how we actually do it, we are still using methods that was developed 100 and 200 years ago. So it's still culture-based method, the golden method, the standard method. Even in hospital, to detect disease, you still need to take the sample back into the lab, and then you prepare your agar, your nutrient nucleus, and you strip on your plate, you grow them, and after that, you see probably something growing, you pick it up and you do identification, then you say, this is salmonella. So this food is contaminated with salmonella, or this patient is infected with salmonella. Then you do your second step, like, to remove the food from the shelf or to withdraw it from the market. So what do you need to do? So that will come next. But before these results come out, it is not one day, it's not 2 days. A lot of time, like, for salmonella alone, to confirm that it is salmonella, it will take, like, at least 2 weeks to confirm. Campylobacter is 2 weeks. So that's why for a lot of countries, for exportation, chicken are all frozen. You don't get fresh chicken, like, in US, you don't get fresh chicken in Singapore because you need to wait for this result to come out. So it needs to be frozen while waiting for the result to come out. So there has been a number of technology being in design or still in the prototype level stage. Technology that would allow us to do immediate detection, so real-time detection. So can I have a technology that straight away tell me, I scan my food, straight away tell me that, oh no, salmonella present or E. coli present, and it could be removed immediately? Could consumer have a device in their hand and scan the food and tell that there is E. coli in the food, and they remove it from, or they choose not to eat the food itself? So this is a dream, like, all of us would like to have. And at the moment, a lot of technology has been put in, like, try not to use the culturing method, but there are pros and cons for a lot of new technology that has been put in over here. And still, we hope, like, in the coming 10 years, we may have, like, something new that is not based on culturing method.
Wonderful explanation by Dr. Chai. Yes, I agree with that. And I think just out of curiosity again, like besides the detection phase and also the packaging phase, what about on the manufacturing level? Like what could we expect? Like, is there any new technologies or new methods of pasteurization or pathogen killing technologies being developed currently?
Yeah, there are always, like, a lot of new technology being developed, particularly, like, to inactivate, like, microorganisms. You could see that a lot of old technology, like, they are being redesigned, restudied, like, how to increase the killing efficiency. So while, like, we understand better microorganisms, so we would be able to redesign some of the technology. So we start to see, like, a lot of reusing of the old technology. For example, UVC. For example, irradiation. A lot of countries do not allow irradiated food, like, due to the fear of, like, safety of the food after irradiation. But Malaysia do allow certain level of irradiation. UVC become one of the, I think, alternative, like, that a lot of people do accept over here. So however, UVC only works, like, for surface irradiation, surface, like, inactivation, because it doesn't penetrate. So for liquid, clear liquid, it works very well. However, the strength of the UVC itself, like, how it works, like, how fast it works, how long it needs to expose. So things change, like, after we understand better how bacteria work, and that become, like, a basis, like, that we use to set up a standard, like, how long you need to use UVC, like, for this type of food, or for this type of food that is full of, like, different microorganisms, or for salmonella, for E. coli, and so on and so forth. So a lot of non-thermal technology is being used nowadays rather than thermal technology, because we all want to have fresh food rather than, like, food that is, like, cooked itself. So heat treatment, I think it is already quite saturated. It is there, like, nothing much that we can do other than, like, having sensors, like, making it smart. So having a lot more sensors, like, so that it could be controlled by the computer itself without the need for human. But the new technology is being developed, a lot of prototypes being developed right now are all based on non-thermal technology.
I see, Dr. Chai. So I see that there's quite a lot of technologies being implemented in all the stages in the food manufacturing and detection and packaging process. So if there are so many technologies being implemented, like why are there still cases or issues regarding food safety that the public is experiencing? And would you say that it's solely contributing to the human errors part or mishandling of food? Yeah.
No, we need to understand that the whole food value chain is actually a very complex system. So as I've mentioned, from farm to fork continuum, it goes through many different players and over a long period of time. So when we talk about this whole continuum, it's not like secure or closed system that food after process, it doesn't being exposed to the environment again. So there are many factors being involved here. So unlike chemical hazards, once you remove it from your food itself, so it will be removed and it will not grow. So your chemical would not grow, but however, chemical reaction may happen and produce probably a new toxin. But this is predictable with the knowledge that we know currently. However, for microorganisms, the problem we are dealing with this is that microorganism is a living organism. It dies, it grows, it survives, just like human, they get sad or it gets sick, so it stops growing. Or also the method that we use, in our detection in the lab itself, how do we ensure, that the food is free of microorganisms? We do tests in the lab, so we know that this technology works, in killing probably 99.999%. So how do we know? By plating of all of these, sample in the lab. However, you must not see microorganism as a unicellular organism without intelligence, I would say. I do not know whether they have intelligence or not, but over a long period of study of microorganisms, I do think that they are very smart. Microorganisms are very smart, they evolve, they change themselves, and they react or respond differently to challenges in the environment. So even when we look at, say, Salmonella itself, so we use UVC to kill Salmonella. 99.9% of Salmonella die off, after 10 minutes of exposure. But there are always, that few cells, individual cells of Salmonella, they survive. So why they survive? Because they have a mechanism to go against or to protect them against UVC. And these microorganisms, these several cells of Salmonella that survive will start to grow again with the nutrients in food. So remember, our food contains a lot of nutrients that support growth of these microorganisms. So when these microorganisms that survive UVC start to grow again in the food and colonize the food itself, now when you use UVC to shine on it again or to irradiate on it again, they will survive. So because all of these microorganisms, they evolve, they grow, they die, they are living organisms. That's why it's very, very difficult, to make sure that we could actually kill off all of these microorganisms 100%. And secondly, we need to look into the host, the microbial host interaction. So just like COVID itself, why is it when all of us stay in the same room, so one people get infected, when he sneezes, out of 10 people, only 3 or 4 people get infected and the rest not. We are exposed to the same amount of pathogens, to the number of virus particles, but our host immune system is very different. So this also makes the study or the understanding of the dose response very different. So thirdly, we can't live without microorganisms. So some of us would like to kill all the microorganisms 100%, particularly after COVID-19, but we just have to admit that we still need microorganisms to survive. So a lot of these microorganisms, they are opportunistic microorganisms. So they're just naturally present in the environment, naturally present in our gut, in our body. So if our immune system is strong, it will not cause diseases. But then our immune system drop, or the number of these opportunistic microorganisms grow to the level that is enough, to breach our immune system, then disease would happen. So therefore, I would say that, probably even in the coming 100 years, we will not be able to remove or we will not be able to solve 100% or to make sure that the food is 100% safe. There's no 100% safe food in the world.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Dr. Chai. And if so, now going back to food safety technology again, so besides the possibility of this is particularly regarding the thermal technology. So you mentioned that it could possibly change the texture or the taste of the food. So besides that, what are some of the other disadvantages of food safety technology that you have seen throughout the years?
Yeah, I probably would not say disadvantages, but I would say limitation. So there are a lot of this technology, there's no 100% efficient technology. There's always a limitation. So that's why, when we go to a factory, so we advise the factory what do they need to do, to solve, their food safety issue or food contamination issue. It's always there's no one size fit all strategy. So it's always based on one factory to another factory, even though if they could be using the same raw material, producing the same end products, as long as the human involved different. So the original microorganism contamination in the food itself is different. So they may need to use different technology to make sure that the end product is actually safe over here. So some of the limitation of the food safety technology itself is that, for heat treatment, of course, just like what you have mentioned, or I have mentioned earlier, it changes the taste, the aroma. So one of the, I think the challenges or we are still looking for the non-thermal technology that is 100% efficient, or at least with a higher efficiency to inactivate microorganisms in fresh foods itself or fresh vegetables. So is there a technology itself? I think that we may be able to get to a point that is close to 100%, but it will never be 100% in activation. So all this use of technology, it will not be depending on just one technology at the manufacturing itself, but combination of several technologies from the farm level to the processing and to packaging itself, to ensure that the food that we eat are at least with the lowest risk that we could actually achieve over here. So at the farm level, you need to have the technology to make sure that the raw ingredients actually have the lowest number of microorganisms before it enter the processing. And at the processing, only then the technology we use so could actually reduce the microorganism further to a number that's acceptable. So it's always a combination of all the technology. So the limitation that we are looking into all of this is that it will not be 100% efficient. It may be efficient towards some of the pathogen, but not the rest. So all of this technology need to be always updated. So research or study need to be always conducted, because microorganism could evolve and new disease could always appear and emerge from the whole system itself. So technology need to always evolve also with the current scenario. So the next thing for a lot of developing country, particularly in Malaysia, so we see that there are so many great technology being used by mega industry, by big industry. Why can't the SME industry use over here? It's because the cost is too expensive to use this technology to produce safe food. So the equality issue come in. So what can we do to make sure that everyone on this earth could enjoy safe food regardless you are rich or you are poor?
I see, doctor. So as you mentioned that our food could never be 100% safe, right? So in the case of a person experiencing any food poisoning or foodborne diseases, who or how can they approach to report their case and to report on a specific restaurant and such?
Yeah. So I would say for consumers, so if you have foodborne food poisoning symptoms, so do go and see a medical doctor. You do not know what may happen. And also for clinics for doctors, like, please record and report, like, all these cases. For ministry, so I would say, like, one of the main role that they need to do is, like, is to improve, like, the system that they currently have, because the epidemiology data that we have currently is still, like, very much limited to typhoid fever, to food poisoning. You do not know what actually is causing the food poisoning, so we do not have such an information. So how the consumer could actually help to push for a change in the country is that please report. So you could go to FSQ, I think the FSQD website online. So you could type in FSQD Malaysia, so it will bring you to the website itself. So you could actually email them, or you could go to their Facebook. So nowadays we are all on social media. So the same goes to FSQD. So they are all on social media. So please go to the social media. You could feedback, like, I have food poisoning cases, like, after eating food from here. But remember, there's one thing, like, the consumer need to do is, like, they need to also continuously educate themselves what is food poisoning. So it's not just about the food that you eat yesterday, but it could be actually caused by the food that you eat last week or 5 days ago. So I think nowadays there are a lot of apps available that you could record what you eat every day. So that probably will be something very, very helpful for the ministry to do the tracing and tracking.
I see. So, Dr. Chai, you also mentioned, like, the food poisoning cases or foodborne diseases is actually quite prevalent, in particular, like Salmonella cases in Malaysia, right? So, in your opinion, do you see that food safety will still be a major problem in the future?
Yes, definitely. So food safety issue will still be one of the major. In fact, like, a lot of people think that why is it in the US, like, they have so many cases? So in Malaysia, we don't have, like, so many cases. So does it mean that we are safer? Our food is safer over here compared to the United States, or, like, to Europe or to Australia? The answer is no. Because, like, when we becoming more aware of, like, the severity or the implication of food poisoning or foodborne illnesses, like, and with the development and the scientific advancement, so the country actually put in more budget, like, to do surveillance, testing, and trace and tracking of diseases, and therefore they are able to record and to find out, like, how many outbreaks actually happening in the country. So it gives you a misperception, or that, like, oh yeah, they have more cases. It's just because they do more testing. So in Malaysia, so we are also, like, advancing, we are developing. So you are going to see, like, more surveillance programs. So more testing are being done, and therefore you definitely will see, like, an increase in the statistic itself. So probably, like, pretty soon. So when this statistic, like, start to goes up, like, and then people will get panic. Oh yeah, we have a lot of, like, cases over here, so we need to do something. So I think, like, in the coming years, like, in Malaysia, so I think there will be probably more emphasis being put into food safety issue.
I see. So if like food safety is still, like, will be a major problem in the future, like, in your own working environment, do you see that there is enough food science experts working currently in Malaysia with regards to food safety technology? And do you actually encourage the younger generation to join the food science field?
Yeah, so I think, like, in Malaysia, so I think based on my own opinion, so I don't think, like, we have enough food safety expert, like, in the country itself. So even in ASEAN, we do not have, like, enough food safety expert. We used to have, like, quite a number of very well-known food safety experts, like, very senior professors, those who have already retired. But we see a huge gap, like, in between. So even for the younger people, like, we do not see too many people go into the field, like, to study food itself. Food technology, probably, yes, like, in how to process food, how to formulate new food and things like that. Yes, but, like, in terms of, like, food safety, not so many. So we are still very much, like, depending on experts from overseas. So rather than local experts. So in not just Malaysia, in ASEAN also. So I think just look at it as a blue ocean over here in Malaysia. While we are one of the major food producer country, so of course, we would have more rooms. We need to have more food safety expert over here to make sure that the food we produce are actually safe for consumption. So always remember that food safety is going to become, it will never be, it's going to be a more and more serious issue or to be emphasized on, is because we are producing way more food. Human population is increasing, so we need to produce more food. And always remember that we do not produce food in our backyard anymore. So you purchase your food from the market, and from the market, do you know where your food come from? So it probably come from Europe, it probably come from Ukraine. So one of the mega farm that is supplying the food to many more countries. So as long as contamination happen at that mega farm, Malaysia has quite some farm also. So it will affect many countries and it will affect a lot of people. So food safety expert is one of the most, I would say one of the emerging expertise that's needed over here.
That is true, Dr. Chai. And just to branch off of the question just now, so what would your aspirations or goals in terms of the food safety industry in the future, or your personal aspiration goals to achieve something in the industry itself?
Yeah, so right now I'm actually working on one of the technology in detection of pathogens in real time. Non-invasive methods means that you do not need to sacrifice or throw away your food just because of you need to test. So a lot of food are actually wasted for testing. 5 to 10% of food that can probably feed one whole country by itself. So all of these type of food can be safe. So after go into the lab, whether it's detected positive or negative, they cannot be eaten anymore. So my aspiration over here is to come up with a new technology that would actually allow us to detect Salmonella or E. coli immediately in a non-invasive method. So this is actually based on volatile organic compound or smells. So imagine in the future, so my aspiration is that everyone, all the consumers could have a device in their hand and use it to test or to smell the raw chicken in the market. Oh my gosh, this Salmonella and I cannot eat it anymore, or it need to be thrown. So this is the new technology I hope that we could do. So with this type of technology, the industry would be able to use it also to sort contaminated food from the non-contaminated one, and the non-contaminated one can go straight into the market and they are close to safe for consumption, and those contaminated can just be discarded or reproduced with high heat and to save the food again to feed more people. So this is something in the future that we need to try to overcome the bottleneck in microbial detection.
Yeah, I'm excited to see that technology being implemented also. Yeah, so to end the podcast session, I would like to maybe ask Dr. Chai for any last pieces of advice to the audience who are watching, maybe with regards to preventing food poisoning cases for themselves or for their family, or to also encourage them to join the food science field.
Yeah, so I just want to say because one of the things that I do very much in food safety is actually educating. So educating the consumers. In Malaysia, the consumers has quite low awareness on food safety issues. So a lot of people do not know what Salmonella is or what E. coli is. So to increase your knowledge is actually very important, because that is the first step that you could protect you yourself and your family from foodborne diseases. So always go around and read. There are a lot of information around. Read about food safety, read about food safety issues from trusted website. There are a lot of fake news going around from the trusted website. So increase your knowledge. So in such a way, only then you will be able to make correct choices, like, during purchasing. So you will be able to tell that I think this is not okay to buy anymore because the temperature is not maintained well. So I need to probably cook my chicken in such a way, or I need to clean my kitchen in such a way so that I can protect my family from salmonella or from foodborne illnesses. So do educate yourself, and remember that we cannot depend solely on the technology. You still need to depend on human, and we cannot depend solely on the government and others to protect you, but you yourself need to protect yourself. So everyone plays a role to ensure that we have safe food for consumption.
All right, that was wonderful advice from Dr. Chai. Now, that would marks the end of our podcast today, and thank you once again, Dr. Chai, for your wonderful and insightful sharing. And it was I believe it will definitely benefit the audience who are watching with regards to this topic. And we thank you for your presence today. Thank you.
Thank you so much.